record. Looks like
So you've got your first assignment coming up on the 24th. So I guess you got a couple of days before that paper is due. But has anybody looked at the assignment yet? Read through it? A couple of you have? Okay. James, you want to just kind of remind everybody what that assignment is about? Would you mind doing that?
Yeah, so the assignment is a paper over something you're passionate about. It's really brief, under 150 words, and it's meant to be really succinct.
Yeah. So we touched on this just a little bit in 130. We talked a little bit about word efficiency. And if you remember, we had we had that assignment where you had 5 different paragraphs. You had to find the errors, and one of the errors in there talked about multiple hours. Right? You guys remember that one? And that's one of those places where there's a lot of redundancy. So we can kind of cut off the word multiple. That's the type of thing that we're going to magnify, that kind of thing when we talk about word efficiency. So when you've got 150 words to tell us about what you're passionate about, use those words wisely, right? And really analyze each and every word. Are you being as efficient with your words as you can be? We want to not see things where you're just writing words to fill up that 150 word count, but instead see 150 words that really count, if you know what I mean there.
yeah.
Make
Yeah,
the
I
words
just want to,
count.
and I want to add to that, because this is something that concision is something that I preach, okay, constantly. And summer year of my class, we just had a lesson plan about a week and a half ago on concise writing, getting rid of to be verbs, writing the active voice, and all that. I'm gonna, if it's okay, I'm gonna put out at some point. Probably won't be able to do it until close to around spring break or thereafter. Put out a doodle poll to try and to do a workshop that focuses, and I can do it online too, that focuses specifically just really on some just concise writing. Because what I've learned is that today, when you're not accustomed to writing concisely, you think that you're making every word count, but you're really not. Okay, it's just because you're not trained yet in really how to do it and how to look for certain things in the English language, and I could probably, and I'll take any challenge. I could take someone's 100 word essay and whittle it down to about 60 without losing any meaning. So it's just kind of learning how to really maximize words. And what's really important is to understand why this is important for you to start now in MC 131, is because when you get out there, for those of you who will go into communications related fields, they're going to expect you to write efficiently, to write concisely. It's a skill that's in demand for the field.
And actually kind of taking that to the next level. So for those of you who don't know, I'm also the internship coordinator. So I'm out there talking to people in industry on a pretty regular basis and getting their feedback about what's important for their employees or graduates coming out of school. And whether you're going into a media related career or not, communication is one of the top skills that's wanted by employers. If you can communicate well, then you've got a heads up over a lot of people. I do some consulting where I meet with businesses, with sales staffs and things like that. And what I talk about is communicating effectively. And companies are willing to pay a lot of money for training for their employees to help them with their communication skills. And if you can bring that to the table right out of the gate, then you're doing great things and you've got a head start.
Yeah, I didn't know that about you, Tom. You know, I don't do it anymore, but I used to have my own business when I was, you know, at Wright College and, you know, teaching them in Chicago. And major corporations would hire me to come in and train their managers, mid-level, you know, employees and upper-level managers how to write. It's a skill they really want. Yeah, they pay big money for it. So, and none of them were in communications fields. A lot of them were in pharmaceuticals. There were some, a lot, United Way was one of my clients. You know, Abbott Laboratories was one of my clients. Sears Roebuck was one of my clients. You know, so it doesn't matter what field that you go to. Tom's absolutely right. You know. So what else do we want to talk about, Tom? I know we're going to get to the AP style book, but
Yeah, we definitely want to talk about that. I think maybe just kind of answering questions as you guys are getting ready for that first assignment or first couple of assignments. Several of you have already reviewed it, the guidelines. So, you know, maybe just give you a couple of minutes to ask some questions that you have for us. Nope. Sienna's rock solid. Way to go. James has reviewed it. Summer's given us a thumbs up.
okay.
Okay.
All right, good. So when you go through MC 131, we do use, you are responsible for applying the AP style to your writing. Yep, there you go. I don't have my book with me, but I have the online version so I can demonstrate a couple things. Does anyone already have the AP style book?
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm seeing some of this.
And, you know, for those who don't have your camera on, you can even just put it in the chat or do one of those hand raises in the chat. So you can do that too. Yeah, it's really, really important. Oh, and I have a question. Does anybody here know what the AP actually is, aside from a style book? Yes, very good. Because, you know, a lot of people don't. You know, they don't really know. They know the AP style book, it's AP, it's Associated Press, but what exactly is it? Yes. Okay, well, we got one, Summer put it in the chat. But what is the Associated Press and what exactly they do? Summer, I think you already heard it in my class. I think I mentioned it about 3-4 weeks ago, whatever it was. But just going to give you a little this is like the 3-penny, you know, definition of the, so you know what it is. So the Associated Press is it's a news service. Okay, you're probably familiar with ABC News, Fox News, World News, you know, CNN and NPR and PBS NewsHour, New York Times, and, you know, Wall Street Journal and LA Times, and a lot of the big papers. You know, not everybody can be everywhere. Okay, they can't be everywhere. So what happens? How do news organizations, you know, get the news? How does a news station in you know, New York City find out, you know, what's breaking? There's an earthquake in Bangladesh, or, you know, or something, you know, across the world. The Associated Press is a newswire service, and the organization has news correspondents who've been vetted to be responsible, you know, thoughtful, reliable, you know, credible, you know, reporters. They're all over the world. And so when something breaks, someone who is associated with the Associated Press, they will feed the story into the Associated Press, and they have tons of writers, and of course they have their own reporters too. And they'll put the content together, and then they feed it out to news organizations, all over the place, news organizations subscribe, to their service. And so they have, the Associated Press has its own style guide for all news organizations to follow, so that there is a unity in language when reporting news. And the whole essence behind the book and the content, the rules that they put forth is for absolute precision, for absolute clarity and meaning when you're communicating content to the masses. That's my 3-penny description of the AP. It goes deeper, but for our purposes, that's it's a start. Okay, to give you some context.
So when we're talking about using the AP style book, we expect you all to read it cover to cover and memorize everything. No, just kidding. Just kidding. Really, it's a resource. It's where you're going to go look things up, kind of like a dictionary, right? You guys don't have physical dictionaries anymore. Everybody goes to Google and says, how do I spell this word or whatever? But it's kind of the same idea. How do I punctuate this? How do I abbreviate that? How do I address this person who has a certain title, whatnot? All of that information is in here. And you're just going to use this as a reference to look up things that you need to know how to do. And don't ever feel embarrassed by doing that. The professionals, New York Times writers, LA Times writers, people that work for CNN, they carry one of these things, or they have one in their desk, or they have it bookmarked on their web. They use this thing every day.
Yeah.
And that's what we're wanting you to do, is get used to using this so that you're comfortable with how to look up the things you need to find.
Right. I think the one thing that's important for everyone to become aware of is understanding, well, when do I need to look something up? Why look up something when, it's just getting into that practice, because a lot of things you may not normally even consider that you would have to look it up. But you do. I'll give you an example. I used this example the other day when I was critiquing the paper for the Collegian. For example, if I were to say something like, since the party is at 5, I'm going to show up at 5:30 because I'm usually late all the time. Silly example, but in that case, for example, the word since I used, according to the AP style book, incorrectly, because since references time, and I'm really talking about cause and effect. Because the party starts at 5, I'm not going to show up at 5:30. Okay. So even a simple word like since or because, you might need to look it up to make sure that you're using it correctly. I want to show you, I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay, this is everyone can see this? Okay. This is the online version. Summer, do you use the online version in class, or do you have the hard copy?
I have the online version.
Okay, yeah, so it also, Tom is right. It's like a dictionary, but sometimes you have to think out of the box because it's not always set up exactly like a dictionary. So for example, let's say you're writing a paragraph and you have to refer to, you have to use numbers or, like money or dollars, cents. Okay. My students they got a quiz on dollars and cents coming up on Thursday. If you look up money in the AP style book, you're not going to find it. There's no listing for money. What you have to do is you have to look under, whoops, and monetary units. And then the rules will come up. Okay, it says see dollars and cents. Sometimes an entry will tell you, oh, go to dollars. Okay, so you click on dollars, and then here it shows you, it tells you the rule. For example, always use lowercase, when to use figures, when to spell out the word dollar, and how to write $4,350,000, something like that. So it kind of shows you exactly how to do it. The same thing if you're writing the name of a city or a state. Do you abbreviate the state? Do you not abbreviate the state? If you're using a street name, do you abbreviate the word street as an ST? Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. You can look up street. Okay, it falls also under addresses. You might have to look up addresses, and here it gives you examples of how to do it. Okay, the AP style even has the word apples. It has applesauce and apples, and Apple ink. Okay, it'll have things like, for example, if you're writing this sentence, the Xerox machine was stolen from the office, police said. You can't use that unless your photocopy machine was actually made by Xerox, because Xerox is a brand name. You have to write the word photocopy machine. Just the same, we often say, oh, my nose is running, Joe, hand me a Kleenex, okay? You can't use that word unless you're actually referring to the brand. Kleenex is a brand name. You have to write, hand me a tissue, hand me a tissue. Okay, it's like a lot of little things like that. And that's what I mean. There are things that you might not think that of looking up that you should actually, look up. So it just takes practice and training, and being aware that to question, do I need to look this up or not? I don't think I do. I think it's just a simple, silly word, but maybe I do. Things like, especially in journalism, like the word only, or just. We'll just say, oh, I just did that, or I just have 3 apples. When we all know what you mean, but really the word you really want to use is only. Okay, because just refers more to time. Okay, this just happened. When we speak informally, we often use words interchangeably, but incorrectly when we're, as far as the AP style goes, and standard English, usage. So you just have to be aware of this and learn to use it. Like Tom said, if you can't sleep at night, it's great. You can wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and read every page of the book and memorize everything. Physically impossible. And the other reason why it's impossible is because the AP is constantly changing rules to reflect changes in our culture, and they often come out with new rules. When COVID hit, they came out with 3 pages of how to reference COVID or a coronavirus and virus and all those kinds of things. And now, of course, with everything that's happening with LGBTQ and diversity and equality and equity and inclusion and belonging, there are rules coming out to reflect all these changes in culture. So, and even pronouns they've come up with. So the nice thing about the online version is that when they make these changes, you have access to them very quickly. With the book, you got to wait a year until the next one comes out. But they do send you the updates though. So again, it's just it's just time, it's practice. The more you use it, the more you'll grow familiar with it. But yeah, everyone has it in the field. They have it either on their phone, if they're out, covering news someplace, and writing the news, they're sending it into the newsroom from their phone or tablet, whatever. They have it on their desk. You're not expected to memorize it. So yeah, all my quizzes for my students with AP Style, it's all open book because I want to learn how to use the book.
So David, what tricks do you share with your students in MC 200 to get them more familiar with using the style quiz?
Tricks, I don't know, Summer, what tricks do I have?
Oh, I don't know if there's any other tricks than just like kind of like you
I don't
kind of
know.
said, like knowing to look it up.
Yeah, not many tricks up my sleeve. I wear short sleeves. Not many tricks up there. But you know what I do is I just I really just encourage students to just go look it up. In MC 200, I teach it a little differently. I focus on specific areas at a time, which the more commonly used, like use of date lines, cities and states. And then like right now they're learning how to use addresses. The last quiz, no, that'll be in 2 weeks. The monetary units, right? Money, how to write dollars and cents. That's what they're learning now. Next week, they're going to learn about titles, because when you're writing stories, especially you're in a school, if you're writing for the Collegian, you're talking about professors, people with PhDs, and you might make reference to someone at Fort Riley, and you might need to use someone's title, like a lieutenant colonel or a captain or a sergeant, or depending on who you're writing about on campus. It's all about titles. There are cities and states. That's another one. So for example, if I look up, it's good to spell it properly. There's no such thing as stays. Okay, states. Where's my stuff with states? Cities and states. Maybe it's under US states. There we go. So where's my big list of states? It's supposed to be up here. I usually use the hard copy version. Abbreviations, acronyms. Kansas State University. Kansas State University, for example, it'll tell you on first reference, use Kansas State, not K-State. On the second reference, you can use K-State. Okay. Here we have state names. Okay. It tells you the names of the 50 states should be spelled out when used in the body of a story, whether standing alone or in conjunction with a city. However, there are times where you just need to abbreviate a state and a date line. I'm not sure if we get into date lines in MC 131.
Right, state names.
Yep. Names. Where is mine? Oh, okay, here you go. Also, here are a list of cities that you can use without using the state name in the body of a story. So if you're writing, the fire happened in Atlanta, you don't need to include Georgia. Unless you're talking about a small town named, called Atlanta that's in another state. The fire happened in Atlanta, Louisiana. So there's no confusion for the, for the readers. Okay, but these are cities that can stand alone. okay, without having to use the name of the state. You can use the name of the state. It's not wrong, but they can stand alone. And if you do use it, the name of the state, you spell out the whole state. You don't abbreviate it. Here, you also have academic departments at K-State, depending on what you're writing. And here they are. This is nice because this is not in the hard copy version. This you'll only get online. Oops. Okay. You've got Riley County government, Riley County offices and functions. It'll give you the rules. All you have to do is click on these things. Okay. And it also, okay, even things like this. The word compose, comprise, constitute, they all have slightly, different meanings. And if you're trying to find the right word, sometimes when my students write something in their drafts, or when I'm critiquing their final papers, I'll make a comment on the side, use a more precise word. And what I'm really telling them to do is to go to that AP style book and try and find a word that is actually more precise than the one than they're actually using, because that's what the AP style is intended to do. It's intended to communicate absolute, precise meaning that you're trying to communicate. So it'll tell you to compose means to create or put together. Comprise means to contain or to include all or embrace. To constitute, in the sense of form or makeup, maybe the best word of neither compose nor comprise seems to fit. So it gives you these little nuances to help you to, use the most exact wording that you can. And one of the reasons why it's so important, because so it's not just things that you have to do, there's reasons behind this and why precision is so important, especially when you're publishing something, whether it's in the field of journalism or communications, PR, marketing, advertising, or even if you're in the ag field or in the pharmaceutical field and you're putting out a report and whatever. Precise wording is so important because if something goes awry, the words that you print might need to hold up in a court of law, okay, at some point. And that's really, really important, especially in the world of journalism, marketing, PR, those kinds of things. So they really take language very seriously. All those fields, they take language very seriously. What else can I answer, or can Tom answer for you around this? Or if you want me to look up something else, I can, continue to look up other stuff and just kind of show you.
Would it be helpful to,
The difference between
Guys,
effect and effect, it's there.
would it be helpful for you guys to get a little primer on the different sections that are in the AP style book? It's maybe not as needed if you're using the online section or the online version, but I think it's still helpful to know the types of information that's in there. So I'm going to just use my book, but David, maybe you can follow along online.
Oh, okay.
For everybody. So the first half of the style book is really it's an alphabetical listing of a lot of different words, titles, businesses, names, things. There's Thanksgiving Day is in here. I just thumbed to a page. A lot of things like that. It's just kind of general information. But then the second half of the book breaks things down a little bit more specifically. There's a section on punctuation. And so you can go there to identify, punctuation questions. There's a section on business. So if you're talking about different types of money from different countries, you can go in there to currency in the business section. There's a section that talks about bankruptcy, transactions, things like that. Anything that's business related is in the business section. So you can find that kind of information in here. There's a section on storytelling, strengthening your storytelling skills, things like that. It's a pretty small section, but could be really helpful as you're sharpening your writing skills. The next section is all about data journalism. So if you're working with spreadsheets and you're trying to figure out how to talk about those, how to write about those, that's kind of where David was talking about those three words there. We've got, comparing, conveying measures of change, writing with numbers, all of those kind of rules. Exit polls, when you're talking about elections, those are a big deal in the news business and journalism. There's a section on health and science. So if you get into questions about how do you write about health and science reports, maybe you're writing about a new research that has been released, and you've been asked to write a news story about that. There's a section on social media. David kind of touched on that earlier. There are guidelines for how to effectively use social media and how to write for social media. So the AP style book includes that. There's a section on digital security. So if you're talking about, cybersecurity issues, passwords, and things like that, of that nature, there's all sorts of things in there. There's a religion section. So if you're writing about a specific church or a specific religion, there's a section there that you can reference. How do you properly punctuate Ash Wednesday, for instance? And when is Ash Wednesday? You can have information about that. What about different religions, different churches? How do they refer to themselves? How do they prefer to be referenced in the media? So a nice religion section. And then there's a pretty solid section on sports. As you guys know, sports is a huge thing when it comes to media writing. Tons of people write about sports and follow sports. There's proper ways to reference. It goes beyond just scores, but talking about sports terminologies, sports people, things like that. And then there's a section on media law. It's not comprehensive, but it's enough to kind of keep you out of trouble. And so you can review some information there under media law. And then news values. Those of you who are interested in going into journalism as a career, you'll want to at least become familiar with that section. And then there's a section on bibliographies. That's labeled bibliography. It's not a bibliography for the AP style guide necessarily. It's information about where they got that. And then the index. And the index is handy if you've got the physical book and you're trying to find something and you don't know where to find it. You can just go back to the index and we'll give you the page number, and then you can flip there. Of course, if you have the online version, you've got the search function, and that is the easiest way to find that.
Mhm.
So a lot of information out there in the style book. Use it, live it, love it, learn it. And we'll be expecting you to be familiar with that as we move into 131 and moving on to 132. For those of you who are more visual learners, I'm going to put in the chat a link to a YouTube video called AP Style Book for Beginners. And it's about a 7.5 minute video. It's broken into chapters, so you can get a little bit of an idea. It's kind of a lot of the same information we've shared with you tonight, all in one video. Good place to go and review that and familiarize yourself with how to use this style book.
Okay. Awesome.